In this video, we're going to take a look at batch rendering. Batch rendering is the process of rendering out our animation internally. We can take our animation and send it to our CPU as a background process to render individual frames or an entire animation. A benefit of batch rendering is that we can still continue to render while that process takes place. To set up our render, I'm going to first go to Render Settings. And let's scale this down just a little bit. And I'm going to switch from rendering using Maya software and use Mental Ray instead. Mental Ray, being our third-party renderer, has a lot more advanced features. Although for this particular animation, we're going to keep it simple. We're not really going to access any of those features. I want to go to the Common tab and make a few adjustments before I kick off the batch render. First, I want to change the frame animation extension. Instead of keeping it at single frame, we want to make sure that this will render out more than one frame and render our entire sequence. So I'll choose name, pound, and extension. And then we have the frame padding. This will add additional values to our numbering. We want to do this so that software will read it properly and see this as a full sequence and not pull things out of order. Next, I'm going to change my image format. Go to something a bit more common. Maya IFF is internal to Maya, so we'll use TIFF, being that TIFF is a bit more widely accepted. And then I want to change the file name. You can see currently that the scene file is being used as the individual frame name. So let's change that. We don't quite need all of that there. We can just call this Crow and hit Enter to accept it, and we'll see that update there up at the top. Next, let's scroll down and set our frame range. Now back inside Maya down here, we can see that our time slider goes from 1 to 50. So I want to match that so that I render out the entire sequence. I'll go to my end frame and type in 50, and again hit Enter to make sure that it accepts it. If we had existing frames out there, we could choose to skip those if we've already rendered them, or if we're starting at a different number than 1, we can also renumber those frames. We don't need to do that here, so we'll just leave those. Next, I want to check and make sure that I'm rendering from the right camera. Currently, my perspective is set, and that is what I want, but you can see we can also render from the front, side, or top, or add additional rendering cameras. Perspective is going to work for us just fine, and I'm going to leave on the alpha channel mask just so that we can take a look at that. And with the alpha channel mask, it's basically going to render our crow on a black background, which will be picked up by other software as just being transparent. So then we could take the crow and place it on a different background. Next, we have the image size, and again, we're going to stick with our default here, and we're going to use 640 by 480. But if we open that up, we can see that we have all sorts of different presets for different video, film presets, as well as print. My options are now good. I'm going to scroll back up and just double check. If we set our project directory correctly, it will render to the images folder. This should be good. I'm going to close my render settings, and we'll make sure that we're in the rendering menu set, and we'll choose render and go to batch render, and I'm going to open those options. And my verbosity level by default will be set to warning messages. I'm going to change this and go back here to progress messages, which will give me a lot more information as my render goes through. I don't really anticipate seeing any problems here, but it's nice to get that feedback so that we can always see exactly what is happening in our render. Next, we have auto render threads. The number of threads is going to be how many CPUs we have available, or cores that we have available on our computer. Choosing auto, Mental Ray is going to go out and try to grab all of those. We could open this up and set our own, which would allow us to free up some of our CPU power if we needed to continue to work. We're going to just leave that at auto, and we'll choose batch render and close. Now once we choose this, Maya is going to save the scene file out in a Mental Ray format. Once it's saved, it'll begin to render, and we'll be able to see its progress in the script editor and also down in our scripting bar here. Let's open up the script editor and take a look. Because it's a simple animation, it'll fly through these frames pretty quickly, and we can see exactly where the images are being saved and the progress of each image as it does get rendered. Now, if at any point in time we need to kill our render, we can go to Render and choose Cancel Batch Render. We're going to let that finish out, but let's take a look at the progress as it goes, and we'll see the progress messages in Maya's output window. This is that second window that always pops up whenever we start Maya, and this will give us very detailed information about the scene itself. And then let's go to our folder. This will be our images folder, and here we can see our frames being rendered, and our project directory was set, therefore it goes into the images folder. Our animation is just about done, and we'll be able to view this using Maya's F-Check software. There, it's finished. I'll just pick any frame, right-click, then we'll go to Open With, and we'll choose F-Check. And so now I can see frame 50 of my animation. Now up at the top here, we can go from color, which we're currently on, or click on the white circle to go to the alpha channel mask. This one here is for Z-depth information. We didn't render with Z-depth, so nothing will be in there. We'll just kind of get a little error there. But I'm going to click back onto my color, and let's load up the entire animation. I'll go to File, Open Animation, and I can just click on the very first frame, and Maya will load all of the sequential frames thereafter. Now, if I just wanted to look at a particular section, I could choose Set End Frame and type in a value where I want that frame to end. We want to look at the entire animation, so I'll start at frame 1 and we'll just double click. And Maya will load all of those frames into my system's memory. Once it's loaded, it'll attempt to play back at the proper speed. And we can see here, basically we're getting 24 frames per second, which is established by our value here that we could type in order to change to a different frame rate.